Hello, I'm Patrick Ngako, and this is my series Superhuman You, helping you reach your true potential through the power of imagination, music, and more. My goal is to inspire people to visualize and achieve their career and life goals using the power of imagination framework. A question that I've been asked quite a bit is, what are some examples of how someone would use the power of imagination to overcome a bad circumstance? What's interesting is we all have access to the power of imagination. This is not something that I've created out of nowhere, right? It's something that you can see in children. My daughter, 5-year-old daughter, she's the one with the most active imagination at this particular point. And she sits around and just creates these beautiful worlds. And you know, what's very interesting is that the worlds that she creates are not that different from the one she currently lives in. You know, but maybe she has a lot more way into the decision making as the daughter, right? She gets to boss the parents around, and I always think that's funny because, you know, it's so beautiful how she's just imagining I guess a better world to what she's having right now. And so the difference between different individuals is that some have an easier access to their imagination than others, right? And so that difference in the ability to access it is critical. And what really stops someone from accessing their imagination are the mental blocks that we have in our mind. And what I mean by mental blocks or mental obstacles, I mean the opinions of others and a lot of the lies we tell ourselves. Throughout the day, we hear thousands and thousands of people's opinions. Some of them, you know, in some of these opinions are buried some facts here and there, but a lot of times it's people's view on the world that we're just ingesting, whether it's in the news, whether it's in conversation at work, with our family. And so we're just taking those in. And where it becomes very detrimental is when these people's opinions become part of how we operate, right? Somebody tells you, well, you're not that great at speaking, or, you know, you're not a great presenter, or you're not good with math, or you're not that intelligent, you're not that clever, or, you know, you're too gullible, you're too this, you're too that. You know, throughout my career, I've been told time to time, which is very interesting. Well, you're not good at presenting. And I'm kind of looking at the person, I'm like, well, my previous job, I was told I was great at presenting, right? So that tells me that's your opinion. And that opinion, you know what? You can keep it to yourself. Because if I start thinking and believing that I'm not great at presenting, then it completely closes out a lot of things that I could have imagined, right? I could imagine that I'm a great leader. I could imagine that I'm a politician. I could imagine that I am, spokesperson for a brand or anything that I want. But because this person told me, and that's their opinion, that I'm not great at presenting, which could have, most likely has nothing to do with me, right? Then all of a sudden I'm taking all these different activities and roles that I could do out of my imagination and say, well, I can't imagine that because I'm not good at that, right? And so what's very important is to understand these obstacles, these mental obstacles. A good example that I like to use, I like to use example from my childhood, but a good example is with regards to my mother. My mother had schizophrenia, and she's had it practically her entire life, right? When I was a kid, my grandmother would tell me with a thick Bajan accent, Patrick, do not stress. Don't put yourself in a difficult situation. Don't have too many things in your life. Live a simple life, because you don't want to get sick like your mother, right? You are your child's mom. You are your mom's son, and schizophrenia runs in your DNA, so you can get sick. And the last thing I want is to have another person with schizophrenia in this family. And so I grew up thinking, well, I got some kind of illness in me. I got something that is just waiting to pop out of nowhere, because my mother got diagnosed with an illness in her early 20s. And so as a child, I'm thinking, well, I'm 8, 9 years old. I got about 12 years of a decent life here. And then after that, everything goes away. And so I just grew up with that. And what I did is I kind of held back because I was like, well, what's the point? Right? What's the point of going all in? What's the point of doing things? What's the point of applying myself? And he actually translated to my schoolwork. And a lot of the teachers will always say, well, Patrick, you're an intelligent, you're a bright guy, but for some reason you're always doing things halfway, right? For some reason you're not applying yourself fully. Well, how can I apply myself when I know by the age of 20, I will not be able to function? That was really the way it was, how it worked within me. And so when I did get in my 20s, well, a little bit earlier than that, when I got to college, I did some research and asked around, and turns out that schizophrenia is not that simple to develop, right? It's a mix of, yes, genetic predisposition, but it's also trauma, life experiences, a lot of different things need to happen and line a certain way for you to develop, that particular mental illness. And so at the end of the day, that was my grandmother's opinion. It wasn't factual with regards to me, right? And so I said to myself, you know what? I am not going to accept that as part of my thinking system. I'm not going to accept that as part of the way I operate. And instead of living in fear that all the efforts that I'm putting in will be in vain because in my 20s, there's going to be this switch that's going to switch on and I'll get sick, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to put in effort. I'm going to apply myself. And that's what I did in college and graduated summa cum laude and was able to pass my CPA exam, work for one of the top professional services firm in the world and still have to this day. And so I'm thinking about, well, if I had kept that opinion to myself, right, I probably would not be talking to you right now because I would have probably not applied myself. I would have not graduated with honors and I wouldn't have had the career, the career path that I have to be able to talk about the power of imagination. And I don't think my imagination would have even allowed me to dream of something else, but to get out of the current circumstances that I was in. And so one thing I like to, advise people to do is, and which I do as well, consistently, is to write down things people tell you, right? Things that people tell you about yourself. And some of the things that you also tell you about yourself, where, you can tell yourself, I'm not smart enough, I won't be able to get this job. I'm not qualified enough for the promotion that I've worked hard for. I'm not just that person, right? I don't speak well. I am not this, I am not that. And just write these things down that people have told you. And for each item that you've written down, ask yourself, is that a fact or is it their opinion, right? And 9 out of 10 times, you're going to realize it's always someone's opinion. And at the end of the day, it has nothing to do with you. It just has to do with the way they view the world and how they view you in their world. Thank you so much for joining my series, Superhuman You. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I wish to see you next time. Thanks.